Hello. Thank you for joining us. It was an honor to address Montanans last week during the State of the State. Over the past 2 years, we have truly accomplished a lot together. We're making state government work better for the people of Montana and opening up the doors of greater opportunity for all of Montanans. One of the accomplishments I'm most proud of is that our private sector has created 31,000 new jobs in the last 2 years. Just let me repeat that number, 31,000 new jobs. Never before have this many jobs been created in Montana in any 2-year period. It's a testament not only to Montanans' unparalleled work ethic and innovation, but also to our pro-business, pro-jobs policies that we've enacted. But as I told the people of Montana last week, we are just getting started. One of the areas we're most focused on is red tape relief, and that's why I'm pleased to have the Lieutenant Governor with me today. It's a priority for all Montanans, especially our small business owners who create jobs and opportunities for hardworking Montanans. That's why on my second day in office, I created the Red Tape Relief Task Force. Led by the Lieutenant Governor, they've left no stone unturned. And this was no small task. It required Herculean effort, and I want to thank the Lieutenant Governor for her leadership, going through every line of every regulation across all of state government. She's really dug deep and led the way to find where friction is between the state's regulatory scheme and Montanans and small business. Lieutenant Governor Juras worked with each state agency to go through all of Montana's code and reform, roll back, and repeal the unnecessary regulations that are on the books. She worked with industry stakeholders who incorporated widespread public input in the process. And because of her leadership, we've made great progress. Lieutenant Governor, would you like to share a little bit about the work you've done on red tape?
Thank you, Governor Gianforte, and I am excited to share about this. As an attorney for over 40 years, I was familiar representing farmers, ranchers, small business owners of the burdens that they face, the costs they face when they run into unnecessary, outdated, or inefficient regulations. And there actually is a law on the books that requires agencies to review their regulations every 2 years, and quite frankly, it hasn't been done. But this administration was committed to regulatory reform, as well as looking at internal policies that could be improved and statutes. So when I first met with the 13 agencies under the governor's jurisdiction, they couldn't even tell me how many regulations were on the books. So I knew we had a lot of work to do. And the first job, from my perspective, was to get all of the agencies engaged, not only the directors, they were very engaged, but all of the employees. We had to make sure that they understood that this was a priority, this was an important project, and that we were counting on them to get this job done. And the response was fantastic. One of my favorite moments was when somebody who's very involved in rulemaking at Fish, Wildlife, and Parks said, it was like confetti going off on my head when you said we get to actually look at our rules and bring them up to date. So we began by doing a template, setting deadlines. What is a burdensome regulation? What should you be looking at to identify as candidates for reform? So we worked on metrics on how to identify them. Then we put timelines in frame. When do they have to have these identified? And most importantly was stakeholder outreach. Most of the agencies, as well as the governor's office, set up portals. We did press releases. We did outreach to interested parties and asked all of them to submit their comments on areas that could be improved. And we received thousands of comments and processed each of those. We also had, every agency had a different approach. Some of them used emails, some of them traveled around the states and had sort of town hall meetings, and some of them did webinars. And we are seeing now the results of the hard work of the agencies. Let me start at 3 levels. First of all, internal policies. One of the things that the Department of Natural Resources and Conservation did was remove the outdated internal policy of literally having to appear on the steps of the Capitol to bid for oil and gas leases on trust lands, and make it an online process, which generated $1 million in funds for the taxpayers when that was first happening. And from a regulatory standpoint, one of the first things that was done was a rule that required 2 journeymen for each apprentice in some of our trades was flipped. So now that 1 journeyman could work with 2 apprentices, and you've seen that that's tripled the apprenticeships in the state of Montana. We also looked at the statutes for outdated statutes. I basically said for statutes, but many of our statutes are from 1889, from statehood. One of my fun stories is my sons in Great Falls, they were required to sell fruit door to door to raise funds for their band and choir activities. And I'm an attorney, their mom. I did not realize they were violating the huckster law. They were required to sell fruit that they didn't raise door to door to obtain a license from the county treasurer to be able to sell fruit door to door. So just for fun, once I became aware of this law as part of this regulatory reform project, I called the county treasurer and asked if we could get a huckster's license. Dead silence. So that is one of the bills that is going through to repeal that outdated law. And again, another important project is our licensing of our trades and professions, making it a priority to make licensing more mobile for people who are trained out of state and licensed out of state to come into the state and immediately be able to go to work to help with our workforce shortages. And that bill, House Bill 152, which is laying here, is a product of 18 months of work. And I just want to highlight again the stakeholder outreach. 1.7 million emails were sent to licensees in these professions governed by what's known as Title 37 of our code to participate in 5 webinars, or one of them was an in-person town hall, to get their input on how to improve our licensing process. And they were able to ask questions. We answered questions online. If we didn't get to them, we followed up with emails. But I just want to emphasize, not only were the agencies engaged, but we engaged the stakeholders as we went through this process. And this is one of the results. It's been a privilege to do it. And we've just hit the tip of the iceberg. This is going to be a project we'll continue for the rest of the administration. Thank you.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor Juras. Because of your leadership, we've really made great progress. And this is just an example of one bill. I think this started out as 400 pages. Fortunately, you reduced the font size and got it down to 200 pages. But it's meaningful results. As was mentioned, there are over 170 red tape relief bills in front of the legislature now. Many of these have already passed out of the House or the Senate. And we appreciate our legislative partners for their help in helping more Montanans prosper by removing these unnecessary, burdensome regulations. And we're ready to get these bills across the finish line and to my desk. To support both our hardworking people and employers, we must deliver on red tape relief. And we must continue to put customer service first in changing the way the state does business. That's why we're changing what doesn't work. We're modernizing state government to make it more efficient. And we're streamlining permitting. And these actions are making a difference. That's what I heard yesterday when I was in Great Falls at the Calumet, Montana refining plant. Members of the Calumet team praised our administration's success in overhauling policies that limited responsiveness and effectiveness of state government. Carlos Centurion, the plant manager, specifically recognized DEQ for adopting a culture of proactive customer service. During the conference yesterday in Great Falls, he said, and I quote, "The Department of Environmental Quality helped streamline the existing environmental permitting process for a renewable fuels project. It was a very collaborative effort that resulted in one of the most efficient permits anywhere in the U.S. This is world class. It was the best I've seen in my career, end quote. Calumet's story is just one example of the strides we've made in the last 2 years, making state government more efficient and making Montana a better place to do business. Calumet is a cutting-edge job-creating business in Great Falls. In fact, they create, according to economic research done, 4,000 jobs in the Cascade County area. They provide Montanans with clean, reliable, affordable fuels resources, and they're leveling the playing field so Montana farmers and ranchers can participate as well. Calumet is a great example of what's possible when there aren't sideboards placed on innovation or red tape holding them up. The results are clear: a healthier environment, a stronger economy, and more Montana jobs. But all their innovative leadership and job creation would not be possible without a stable, predictable regulatory process that they can rely on. Our red tape relief efforts are focused on creating that reliable, business-friendly regulatory environment to encourage more job creators, just like Calumet, to invest in our state and in our people. And the ultimate goal is helping more Montanans into good-paying jobs. Ultimately, what continues to motivate me every day as your governor is one goal: creating greater opportunities for you, your kids, and your grandkids so they can prosper right here in Montana. Where we can get government out of the way, so that they can thrive, we'll do exactly that. That's why we're moving forward with the largest tax cut in state history. We've been clear: Montanans have overpaid their taxes, and we need to give it back. We're going to cut taxes by over $1 billion. Our plan delivers Montana's largest tax cut ever, providing relief to Montanans at every income level. Our plan delivers significant, meaningful property tax relief as well. Our plan also raises the business equipment exemption to $1 million for every small business in Montana. Taken together with our work last session, we'll eliminate the business equipment tax for 5,000 small businesses across the state. To build stronger families, we're proposing a $1,200 child tax credit for kids under 6, and we propose an adoption tax credit so every child can live in a home where they can reach their full God-given potential. Our plan also makes Montana more competitive with our neighboring states, attracting innovative job creators who will invest in Montana and our people. Working with the legislature, I look forward to providing Montanans with this tax relief. They need it, they deserve it, and they need it without further delay. I'm encouraged by the progress the legislature is making to provide Montanans with meaningful tax relief. Ultimately, tax relief is a priority for Montanans, and we must deliver. As I often say, better is always possible, and working with the legislature, we're making Montana the best state in the country to do business. Together, we're opening the doors of greater opportunity so more Montanans can achieve the American dream. Because creating greater opportunity for you and your loved ones is our top priority. With that, I'll happy to take some questions for myself or the Lieutenant Governor. Who would like to be first? Jonathan?
Thank you, Governor. Jonathan Avery, Montana Television Network. I wanted to ask you in regards to the tax relief package. The House, on second reading, passed a lot of those bills yesterday, and the package that they've put together differs quite a bit from what you initially proposed. A lot more money put into income tax rebates. I was wondering if you could tell us how much role your office has had in the discussions and negotiations about this, and what you think about the package as it stands now.
Well, we've been very clear. Montanans need meaningful tax relief. That's why we put forward $1 billion of relief, both in immediate and long-term rate reductions. I meet weekly with the majority leadership and the minority leadership, and we've been collaborating. But I've been clear. We need to get money back in the hands of Montanans because they've overpaid. Yes?
Governor, Shaylee Rager, Montana Public Radio. On the same note, on the tax package that moved yesterday, we heard a lot of concerns, mostly from Democrats, that the package is moving too quickly, that we should wait to pass this legislation until we get revenue estimates later this spring and we have more information. Do you think there's any value in slowing that package down?
I think Montanans want tax relief, and we need to get it to them without delay. Yes.
Probably for Lieutenant Governor Juras, but on the red tape relief, how are you sort of vetting the input from people that are being regulated and avoiding, a scenario where they're asking to be deregulated? So what's sort of the back and forth there? Can you expand on that a little bit?
Yes, so again, an important part of our regulatory reform, and we've been working hard on this since the legislators went home in 2021, is to get the input from people affected by the regulations through many means, as I mentioned. And of course, we get differing opinions. There are some, actually, we had some resistance from some of our proposals to deregulate. For example, certain occupations that we felt were safe to deregulate because of a number of factors we looked at. Maybe national standards have come out now and there's no longer need for state standards, very few licensees in the field, and property managers is an example that comes to mind. And some of the professions that we propose to deregulate or to move from the regulation of a board to a program within the department, and the department currently manages 7 programs, including genetic counselors, for example, crane operators. Some of them preferred to remain regulated. So we have tried to strike a balance of all of the comments that we have heard, picking up all of those that we believe fall in line with the governor's priority to streamline processes, licensing, mobility, and others we have not incorporated into our projects because we didn't feel that they furthered the purposes that we're trying to achieve.
Yeah, and I would just add to that kind of the lens we looked at this all through was we only wanted to get rid of the unnecessary regulations. We need regulations. We're not getting rid of all of them. We need regulations first for public safety. We also need regulations to protect the environment. But it's sort of like we have been renovating this house for decades, and we went in, we found shag carpet with linoleum on top of it and then hardwood on top of that. And so we're just removing the burdensome ones that are unnecessary while incorporating the input from the industry sectors that are affected by these regulations. Yes?
You took Montana Press. I just wanted to get back to tax relief, tax policy broadly for a bit, and kind of ask you about your long-term vision for what the state's tax system looks like. You talk a lot about competitiveness. You've been pushing to reduce the state income tax rate. You're, of course, comparing us to states that generally have sales tax as part of their mix. And are you leading us in a direction that where 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, our income taxes are lower, but we'll need a sales tax to make up the difference?
Yeah, so Montanans have spoken very clearly. They do not want a sales tax. So there is no plan that we're considering that includes a sales tax. What we are doing is we're assuring that we're funding essential services, but we have slowed the growth of government. And as our economy grows, even at lower rates, we have the money projected to fund essential services. What we're doing is we're lowering the burden on individual Montanans at every income level and giving relief. And that's going to result in more prosperous outcomes.
What do you think, if I can follow up quickly, what do you think a sustainable top bracket income tax rate for the state is?
I've said publicly that long term, I'd like to see it below 5%. 4.9%, something in that range. We're not going to get there overnight, but we're making incremental steps. And as I've always said, football games are won with 3 to 5 yard plays. And actually this session, we might run an end sweep as well. So, yeah. Yes?
Blair Miller with the Daily Montanan. As all these tax package bills head over to the other chamber, is there anything that you're going to be looking to leadership on that side to change and then go back between the both chambers and find some middle ground?
So I've been very clear. We need to get substantial relief to Montanans. We've proposed $1 billion in tax relief and permanent cuts and rebates. I'm pleased that these bills are moving through, and I look forward to getting them on my desk so I can sign them. Yes, Shaylee.
I have a question for the Lieutenant Governor about red tape relief. So we're around 170 bills here, but I'm curious if you have an estimate or can quantify administrative roles that have been targeted with the task force?
Yeah, we have identified that there are about 15,000 regulations on the book, and we're looking at two metrics, more than two metrics, not only the quantity of the regulations, but the quality of the regulations and their understandability to those who have to comply with it. We, in our regulatory reform process, have determined that the average grade level that is required to understand our regulations is 20th grade. I don't even have that, and I'm an attorney. So we want to bring we don't have like a 1/3 reduction, because that's easily achieved by you just combine two rules into one to do that. So we do hope to reduce the number of regulations. My personal target by the end of the year is 10% or 1,500 regulations. We're moving towards that. We've already reduced by approximately 500 regulations, but also making them easier to understand and bring that reading level down. We're thinking of going a pilot project to some question and answer formats that'll be easier to understand, but that may take more words as well, and that's why just number of words or number of regulations alone isn't sufficient. And again, it's the quality, making sure that our processes are efficient, that we're reducing mistakes, that we're closing any black holes, such as in the water right permitting process. We found some black holes where, although on paper it's supposed to be a 360-day process, we found one permit that was 15 years languishing and several at 2.5 years. Or 6 years. So we're taking out that black hole and setting a fixed deadline so that if House Bill 114 passes, we are going to be reducing from 360 days, plus some black hole period, so it can actually be longer than that, to 105 days, the process required to obtain a new water permit or to change an existing water permit.
And just to add briefly, I think I totally support what the Lieutenant Governor said. The goal is, with all of Montana regulations, is that a Main Street business owner should be able to read them and understand them. Right now, a PhD is not sufficient. You need a PhD with postgraduate work to even read and understand Montana regs. Is there an online?
Not online.
Okay, yes.
Kind of a quick follow-up on Shaylee's question. Tom Goodland, is this a pretty widespread issue, or were there certain agencies or areas of law and regulation that were more focused on than others?
We've asked all 13 agencies, but obviously amongst agencies, the Department of Military Affairs has under 100 regulations. And the Department of Public Health and Human Services has 5,000 regulations. So obviously, we have to make sure that we're meeting the needs of each agency's, putting more effort into some of the larger agencies with more rules and more permitting processes. But it's an agency-wide effort. No agency has been left untouched. And as I said, they're not only looking at the regulations on the books, but internal policies that can be improved, as well as statutes that they operate under that need updating.
Yes.
Change gears entirely. There was a bill up, I believe, in the House yesterday that would have if it passes, would take the Indian Child Welfare Act and encode that in federal law, and encode that in state law. I'm curious, do you support that idea and concept?
Well, as you know, there's 4,500 bills moving through, so if it gets to my desk, we'll give it a close look. Good. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate you coming out.